are you to think you're a superior race, racing toward your everlasting doom? All right, my friends, let's get to it. And by the way, before we go into the big, meaty, unfortunately very meaty warfare coverage with a lot of different portions on this terrible meal plan here, do we have a new... Yes, the Russians tell me we have a new advertiser. Let's get our advertiser voice guy in here and he'll give us the information. Advertiser voice guy, are you there? Can you hear us? We need to find out about the new ads and our big new sponsors. Adman, are you there? Give it to us, brother. Yes, that's right. I'm here, Gardner. We have a fantastic new advertiser. It's the bestseller of the year. A message from our sponsor, Lies the Trump Way. It's the new international bestseller, and it's spreading like a cancer. Get it while you can, because the price is going to go way up. They just can't ship them anymore. All those books in those trucks, and the gas is going up. Well, good thing there's digital electronics, and this won't be censored, G-Man. Back to you. Wow. Hey, that's great. I'm glad he's still around. He's a big member of our staff. We give him the big bucks, right? Okay, so before we go into the unfortunate, very unfortunate warfare news information and a couple facets that are interesting culturally, I don't know that much. We'll talk about the new Ayatollah, and as some people were just saying inside Rumble, obviously he's going to be a big target. But I want to mention something that I caught live today, and not the sore throat that I've got. Actually, my glands are as bad as Pete Hegseth's ego right now. Would you believe Donald Trump's ego and Donald Trump's capacity to lie? Anybody who got to see Donald Trump today speaking at this big Republican conference in Florida? I happened to click on Mario Nawfal. And Mario Nawfal's, he's always up and down and back and forth. I can never figure this guy out. But he was broadcasting this live, and I literally just caught it a little bit after 5 o'clock. I mean, the Russian team. I was eating peeled grapes being given to me by my slack-jawed lackeys here. I don't really do a lot of the work. It's the Russians. You know how it is. But anyway, yeah, here in the Gulag, the Russians said, Gardner, there is a man lying. And I said, oh, it must be Donald Trump or one of the many, many hundreds of others down there in Washington, the thousands. So it turns out I was looking to see if Donald Trump had any new information about what he was going to be doing regarding Iran. Because I heard, he's going to have a press conference. He's going to say this, he's going to say that. I did some looking. I didn't see any super updated information that would indicate to me maybe he's wising up and realizing that he doesn't have the logistics and the armament to keep this going. But I didn't see that. What I did see was this. Now, we're going to watch this, and I want to play that old Sesame Street, one of these things is not like the others with you. And I wish I could have broken it up into a grid. Three of these things are just like the others. One of these things doesn't belong. Yep, that's right. A little Bob McGrath there for you. That's right. And rest in peace, Bob. Here's Donald Trump. You let me know how he's lying.
To a level that
he's talking about prescription drugs, by the way, bringing them down to a level that, is almost as low as his ethical position.
That nobody's ever done. 28 years, I brought it down 1/4%. Now I brought it down 80%, 90%, 75%, depending the way it's driving the fake news crazy because I say 400%, 500%, 600, depending on the way you want to talk about it, if you want to talk about pricing. But using a conservative number, what we've done is we paid the highest price for drugs anywhere in the world, and now we pay the lowest price for drugs anywhere in the world. We are tied for the lowest price. Whoever has the lowest price, that's what we pay. And I did the tariffs with support.
Yeah, okay. And the feed was breaking up there. He says he did that with tariffs because you remember he made you pay. He extracted $350 billion from the U.S. economy, utilized an unconstitutional executive branch so-called power that was unconstitutionally given to him by Congress. And of course, it's not even the fact that it's unconstitutional. It's immoral for a bunch of people to tell you you can't buy something from someone else the way you want to buy it. You're a part of this nation, and we're going to point guns at you because that's ethical. No, I don't think so. But in addition to that, Donald Trump is lying. How do you know he's lying? And how do you know you can't trust a person who does that sort of thing? It's pretty easy, because he's only talking about prescription drugs that are covered by the government costs. All he did was get arrangements from some countries, and a lot of that has fallen through, to supply drugs to the United States at lower cost for prescription drugs covered by Medicare, Medicaid, and Medicare Part D. He didn't lower prescription drug costs for the rest of us. He increased prescription drug costs for the rest of us, because the companies that cut their charges for the government contracts are going to have to make up what they're losing. And they're going to make it up by charging people who pay their own insurance and pay their own pocketbook payments for prescriptions. So the fact that a politician excises that portion of the conversation in order to sound like the biggest snake oil salesman in the world, I ought to tell you, he's a snake oil salesman. He's lying through his teeth, lying by omission, and claiming he's getting great savings and deflecting from the fact that he's not really talking about the entire economy for prescription drugs. He's trying to depict it as if he's saving people money for prescription drugs, and he's not. He's just saving the government money on the contracts that it makes, and those costs will be shifted. Duh. At what point do enough people realize, I'm getting tired of being insulted? How about that? It's just amazing. Oh, wow. So I figured I'd give that to you. Oh, and by the way, in talking about lies, people asked Donald Trump, did the U.S. hit the desalinization plant in Iran? And not only is that desalinization plant important for many people in the population of Iran, it's also important for other people in other countries. But let's hear from Donald Trump, lying again.
They're asking him about the U.S. attack on the desalination plant in Iran. Now listen to his answer.
That's Danny McAdams, the Ron Paul Report.
The U.S. had the among the most evil people ever on earth. They cut babies' heads off. They chopped women in half. What they did, take a look at October 7th. Take a look at what they've done over the last 47 years. So I know nothing about a desalinization plant other than to say they're complaining about a desalinization plant. We complain about the fact that they shouldn't be chopping babies' heads off, okay?
Which is absolutely bizarre, because Iran wasn't involved in October 7th. We know that.
And on October 7th, they weren't cutting babies' heads off either. It was Iran that was blowing people to pieces using U.S.-supplied armaments coming down from Apache helicopters that provided most of the death.
No babies' heads were chopped off. Women were not cut in half. Someone is feeding him this very, very bizarre stuff that he keeps regurgitating over and over. Seems like he's losing it. Our friend David Stockman, I think he posted in response to that saying, J.D. Vance, you need to look into your duties on the 25th Amendment, because
Now, let me ask you, typically, I don't really approach that sort of stuff, because I think that's sort of, it's an easy semi-serious insult to say, well, you're losing it and so on. But, based on the way that Trump behaves and his incredible supernova brilliance of narcissism. I mean, it's just so starkly blinding. It's so bright. I wonder what you think about this. Here in our offices, in our Hot for Teacher meeting room, where the table is 25 feet long, and, the ghost of Eddie Van Halen plays the guitar walking down it as we do a tracking shot, a dolly going backwards on it. I'll just say this. As they said in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, anyone who wants to become president shows that he or she has such an ego and thinks so much of himself that he or she should be immediately disqualified. I think that stands for about 90% of those people. They're already so hubristic and egotistical and arrogant that they're dangerous. And then you get the feedback loop where they are also slightly weak. And so they will answer to certain interests that they know can help them stay in power. Whether it's the Adelsons or it's the military industrial complex or it's the, the pharmaceutical companies or AI companies and things like that, like, Palantir. So that's just by way of intro, a little something to consider. And I'd love to get your thoughts. Do Not Follow's in the house with his great take on the Repo Man overdubs that they use to keep it from getting censored on television. Kick out the farms, melon kickers, or jam out the farms, melon kickers. Sorry, man, I screwed you up there. Jam out the farms, melon kickers. Take off of the MC5 meets the Repo Man stuff. That is wicked. That's great, man. It was really, one of the guys I always thought was really interesting to hear interviewed from the MC5 was Wayne Kramer. Rest in peace, Wayne Kramer. What a crazy life he had. And he helped a lot of people once he, straightened himself out and was able to give people some advice and help and stuff like that. You could tell he was always a pretty sharp dude and, reading philosophy and visiting prisons and stuff like that. Really interesting guy. All right, let's get into it, everybody, and go with a couple of the major items here. This is going to relate to video as well. We've got war, Iran. In an interview with CBS News, Trump stated that the war against Iran is very complete, pretty much, whatever that means, and very far ahead of schedule. You mean you're running out of armaments even faster than you thought? Compared to his initial estimate of 4 to 5 weeks. It means nothing. It's the snake oil salesman pitch for prescription drugs again. It doesn't mean anything. But Trump also said that he does not like. Do you like my hat? No, I do not like your hat, P.D. Eastman. Trump also said he does not like the fact that the Iranian government selected a new Ayatollah. How dare they? They had to storm that building, those terrible electors. Yes, he is, of course, the son of the man Trump recently had his U.S. military unconstitutionally and immorally murder. He is Mojtaba Khomeini. He lost 8 members of his family, everybody, to U.S. aggression a week ago. Now, I was thinking about that earlier today. I was listening to Judge Napolitano, listening to a few other folks on talk radio, sort of getting an assessment of what they were thinking. I thought, I can't even imagine being in that position. How do you handle the anger and the despair, especially as a parent losing your child? So let me go through this for you. So he lost 8 members of his family in that strike against his father last week, right? The man, his father, who had a fatwa against nuclear weapons, but they kept saying was some, religious, radical, zealot, crazy man. That would be, people like Lindsey Graham and people like Pete Hegseth, who you might have seen recently. People have been digging up the video we were showing about this time last year of Hegseth, actually more than that, 2 years ago almost, more than that, of Hegseth at the King David Hotel, talking about what a miracle it was, all the different miracles, how there's going to be another miracle. In other words, rebuilding the temple. Yeah. So we all know about the Christian Zionists, Mike Huckabee, having a picnic lunch right across the wall from where, people are being slaughtered and starved to death in Gaza. They don't care. They don't care. They don't see the hypocrisy, and they don't see the stark difference between their crazy Zionist aggression to do what doesn't need to be done and is not really part of the Bible, which is to somehow usher in the second coming of Christ. Sorry, doesn't work that way. You might as well go for the great prophet Zarquan from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, who, by the way, did show up at the restaurant at the end of the universe. He was a little late. He said, sorry, I'm late. Traffic was just terrible. And then the universe ends. But the hypocrisy is amazing. And I don't see the Ayatollah being the aggressive one internationally. I don't see anybody in those positions being the aggressive ones for decades. It's the Americans, their new imperialism, and now this new take on it, the Christian Zionism, which has tied itself to Israelites and Zionists for quite a while. But let's look at this. That set of innocent people includes, of course, the new Ayatollah's father, former Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, his mother, Mansoureh Kojatse Bargazadeh, his wife, Zara Haddad Adel, his son, and an unnamed grandson, the unnamed grandson of Ali, his sister, Hoda Khamenei, brother-in-law, Meshba Megheri Khani, and 2 nieces and nephews. So essentially, either most of his family or about 3/4 of his family was killed, blown to pieces. Now, Trump and Hegseth, and you might have seen this in the Sunday News Assembly, that's free for everybody on Sundays at my Substack. Trump and Hegseth both claimed that the U.S. did not wipe out 180 children with a double-tap strike to an elementary school on the first day of the so-called war against Iran. No declared war. He should be impeached. Better understood as U.S.-Israeli aggression against the people and government of Iran. And so, of course, here's what he said.
Mr. President, did the United States bomb a girls' elementary school in southern Iran on the first day of the war and kill 175 people?
In my opinion, based on what I've seen, that was done by Iran.
Is that true, Mr. Hegseth? It was Iran who did that?
We're certainly investigating.
Still
But
investigating?
the only side that targets civilians is Iran.
We think it was done by Iran. Because they're very inaccurate, as you know, with their munitions. They have no accuracy whatsoever. It was done by Iran.
Okay, so as I mentioned on Friday when we played that Friday, maybe Pete Hegseth is unfamiliar with the bullets that they find in the skulls of Palestinian children, or the fact that they were shooting people trying to get food, or the fact, of course, that they even have a term for it in Israel called mowing the lawn. And it's amazing because these reporters don't sit there. They sit there and they take it. They allow this group of people to take their rubber gloves, take a bunch of dog poop and smear it all over their faces and make little clown faces on them while they're up there on the plane. How can you go to work like that? Unless when you come back, you're exposing them for their lies. Of course, as we know, and this has been going around a lot the past 36 hours, 24 to 36, video of the area clearly shows Tomahawk missiles made and used by the U.S. hitting buildings right beside the already burning school. This video down below was taken moments after the initial strikes, which were on the school. It doesn't take a Rhodes Scholar for what that label actually means. Please see Bill Clinton, but we understand the euphemism. It doesn't take a Rhodes Scholar to figure this out. Here are Trump and Hegseth just above in a clip that shows Trump first claiming that it was Iran trying to fire its own rockets, which misfired to kill those children. Oh, if they had only bought American weapons. Then Hegseth claims that only Iran attacks innocent civilians. We showed the above clip in the Sunday News Assembly, but want to provide more information indicting the U.S. megalomaniacs. Fox, by the way, oh yeah, I've got that's something else. I need to edit that. I just got to go back in. We're going to show Donald Trump showing up for the dead bodies of soldiers wearing his baseball cap. Yeah, Fox didn't play that. They played it once and then they got rid of it. They played an old piece of footage showing him without his baseball cap on. But let me give you this. The moment a missile struck a school in Manab. Now, I have seen different interpretations of this, saying that the school was already on fire. Then I've seen other people saying, no, this is the rocket hitting the school. So if you have other information, let me know. I'm going to be right on the fulcrum on this. There you go. And of course, Jeremy Lafredo is in the news. Jeremy Lafredo expands on a rather obscurant point from the New York Times about this. Let me give you some of this. New York Times, he writes, published an article yesterday entitled, U.S. Continues Airstrikes Against a Wide Array of Targets in Iran. Sort of like that group of headlines that we saw where they soften the language against a wide array of targets in Iran. What exactly does that mean? Oh, you mean hospitals, medical centers, schools, because they hit more schools. Yes, of course, Jeremy Lafredo writes, yet the targets they chose to report on by the New York Times are actually extremely narrow. Readers are told that the strikes have hit military targets, sites affiliated with the IRGC, ammunition bunkers, missile launchers, air defenses, missile launchers. Oh, he has missile launchers in there twice, weapons depots, and radar systems. But not in the article are the 10,000 plus civilian apartments and homes, more than a dozen medical facilities, a water desalination plant, several schools and seminaries, a pharmaceutical manufacturing facility, and at least 3 stadiums. Yeah. So just to show you, in case NewsGuard is watching, hey, NewsGuard, look, U.S. continues airstrikes against a wide array of targets in Iran. Just in case you were wondering, NewsGuard, you can find that hyperlink in my Substack. You don't have to send me an email about it. By the way, there's also a lot more when we talk about the U.S. dead and those that are getting shipped over to Germany who are injured, and how it's probably 100 times more than the 7 that they've mentioned so far. But again, if you're in the military and you're letting them send you there, you got a problem. You shouldn't be doing that. If you're letting them send you anywhere outside the United States when there's no declared war, there's a problem. If there are bases all over the place and there's no declared war, there's a problem. There's not supposed to be a standing army. That's the founder's idea. And again, now we're hearing that they're taking the 82nd Airborne off of scheduled exercises, and they might be shipping them to Iran. And the other thing about that is that these guys who might have entered the military and gone off on their deployments and now are being rechanneled, or could be, to Iran, they're doing what they're told. They're following orders. Maybe they should have listened to one of those 6 senators who said, you don't have to follow illegal orders. And maybe they should have gotten down to the root of it, because it's unconstitutional orders, not illegal. Because they can write any statute they want, and it could stand for quite a while if you've got corrupt Supreme Court justices. It's up to each individual to read the Constitution. And of course, many individuals will read it all sorts of crazy ways. That's what many Supreme Court justices have done. And of course, that's one of the things that the anti-federalists tried to explain to people. Don't put so many things into the U.S. Constitution and explicitly say only the things that are in there are the explicit powers. Everything else is reserved. But they still reinterpreted that. Even Alexander Hamilton, writing in Federalist 47, said, well, it'll be restricted. Now, only the things that are written down. He was lying. He obviously was lying. Oh, by the way, let's talk about some more lies. Let's go with Pete Hegseth. Here we go. This is a little bit March 7th, Saturday.
Achieve specific effects on behalf of the American people. And that's right here.
Secretary Hegseth, thank you. Reagan Reese with the Daily Caller. You touched on this in your opening remarks, but I'm hoping you could expand on it a bit. It's been reported that Iran might be trying to outlast our ability to intercept their missiles. It sounds like you guys are saying they don't have the ability to do so. Is that the case? Can they outlast us in their ability to do that?
Iran cannot outlast us.
What a stupid thing to say. He's just so full of overconfidence. This is a gigantic country. Tehran itself has 9 million people in it. He's got no clue what he's talking about. Their supply lines are stretched so thin right now. The only thing that the United States could possibly do is try to wipe out depots on an island off the coast of Iran that are very important for Iran. The Chinese and Russians are helping Iran. Iran is the home base. The United States is stretched thin. Their supply lines can't handle this much longer. What a dumb thing to say. So stupid.
We're going to ensure through violence of action and our offensive capabilities and our defensive capabilities, as I said, that...
Now, Listen very carefully to what he mentions here. He starts saying, and our offensive capabilities and our defensive capabilities. Now, watch how he starts to frame this as Iran is the aggressor. This is very interesting. And I don't even know if he overtly knew what he was doing here, or if it's just the attitude that these people are taking, generally speaking. Watch this.
Set the tone and the tempo of this fight. That's why stories and speculation about different things that try to make it look like we're limited in what we can do. The only limits we have in this is President Trump's desire to achieve specific effects on behalf of the American people. And that's why we don't talk about, you can say 4 weeks, but it could be 6, it could be 8, it could be 3. Ultimately, we set the pace and the tempo. The enemy is off balance, and we're going to keep them off balance. And we know their ability to shoot versus our ability to defend. That difference gets wider and wider every day. Our defense gets better. Their offense capabilities diminish. As we are going into ammunitions that we, as we said, have tens of thousands of and can drop unlimited supplies on with even more effects than the standoff munitions we have now, which is why when we say the throttle's going up, the throttle's going up and it's going to stay on high. Thank you all very much.
It's amazing. So did you notice the way he started to frame that? Again, which country is just sitting there? Which country is surrounded by American bases? Which country has repeatedly seen assassinations by Israel, seen the United States supply chemical weapons that killed between 250,000 and 300,000 Iranians, giving the chemical weapons to Iraq? See the United States knock out an Iranian jetliner. Seen the United States supposedly be interested in engaging in peace last June and then attack nuclear facilities that could have poisoned thousands of people. And he's got the gall to talk about defensive capabilities and their offensive capabilities and to continue to frame it that way. Who's on defense, Pete? Could you just say that? Who's the aggressor? And not say, as you got to see David Knight earlier today, Reason Magazine did a great job, and I put that into yesterday's Sunday News Assembly. We'll watch the skit. As the United States describes their aggression as a preemptive defensive strike. Preemptive defense. It's preemptive defensive aggression. That's what it is. See how that works? Sure. Welcome to the Ministry of Truth. Hello. Don't look at this hand. Look at this hand. It's amazing. It's amazing. He's got no shame. Now, I recorded a large segment of RT today at noontime. And just got to say, I was so glad that I did, because Rick Sanchez had Scott Ritter on. And Scott Ritter explained what he has discovered about the mass murder of those children at the Manab school a week and a couple days ago, and how it was a double tap and what happened on the second strike. Now, I was going to put all that together into the editing booth and all those things. Well, it turns out that Rick separated that portion, and there's a lot more from RT that I will show a little bit later. I've got it in my video library. But they put this out on X. I have retweeted or re-X'd this. So if you want to get this segment, just go to my X at Guard Goldsmith and you'll see it. You can jam out the Farms melon kickers over there and kick out the jams. But let me show you this, because this is, I think it's really important to see what they're doing with our money.
How do you explain an illegal war of aggression? Well, you lie. And this administration has lied across the board. We've lied about why we're fighting this. In fact, as the administration can't articulate a cognizable reason why we're engaged in this conflict. We were told it's about nuclear threat, but we know that Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, who is ultimately responsible for the singular assessment from the U.S. intelligence community that there is no nuclear threat from Iran, that Iran is not pursuing a nuclear weapon. But the president has chosen to embrace an alternative set of facts. Those alternative set of facts come from Israel. And so now we have the real reason. We are going to war for Israel on a timetable designed by Israel to achieve objectives that benefit Israel, but not the United States. And in the process, we have abandoned all those whom we claim to be our regional allies. All of the Gulf Arab states who've been buying billions of dollars of American military equipment under the pretense that the United States would be there for them in their time of crisis are now looking around, abandoned by the United States, because we only defend one nation, and that is the nation of Israel. And we're not even doing a good job at that.
Now, there's a little bit more here, so let me make sure that I can dig this up for you. That's just the opening, and I've got to get the second segment here. So let me give this over to you here. And that is, let me just double check here for my. Oh, you know what I need to do before I do that though is do this. Okay. And do this. Okay, here we go. All right, everybody. Now this one, this is very emotional, and I think it's important to play it. So thank you, Russians, for getting that together. Okay, this came at the tail end of the noon segment for RT.
Former U.S. intelligence officer Scott Ritter exclusively in today's edition of Sanchez Effect. Here's a preview.
These fake Iranians are out there dancing, celebrating the death of Ali Khamenei, and ignoring the fact that the United States on the opening day of the war fired 4 cruise missiles into a facility that was evacuated by the Revolutionary Guard Command long before the conflict. One of these missiles struck a school. The fourth missile, 3 missiles, 2 missiles struck empty warehouses, 1 struck a school. The 4th missile was loitering over the site, collecting data, sending it back for battle damage assessment. The 2 warehouses were empty, no secondary explosions. But the 3rd site that they struck, they noticed an accumulation of human beings, people running to the site. And so they ordered the 4th missile to strike. The 4th missile went up, came down, and hit. The missile is designed to penetrate with a bunker-busting capability, but there's an additional factor to this missile. Our brilliant weapons designers have concluded that the excess fuel in a Tomahawk missile at the moment of impact can actually be weaponized into a thermobaric weapon, a fuel-air explosive. And so they hit the button, turned the excess fuel into a thermobaric, and the people they saw running were the children who survived the initial attack. They went to the prayer hall with their teachers, and they asked the parents to come in and retrieve their children. Parents are on their way. So the movement you saw were survivors going into the building, teachers with them, parents come to them, and we put the 4th cruise missile in there, turned it into a thermobaric bomb, and burned these children alive. That's this war in a nutshell. Yeah. We don't know what we're doing. We don't know what we're targeting. And all we're doing is murdering people. And you know why this happened? Because Pete Hegseth canceled a Department of Defense directive that required a civilian mitigation team to go over each target to make sure that we weren't striking the wrong targets. He called that woke. He called that ineffective. He wanted to be the most lethal fighting force in the world. Kill, kill, kill. Well, Pete, you killed them. 170 of them. Children. You're a murderer. You're a war criminal. And so is Donald Trump. And so is every American who supports this war.
Wow. And you can follow Rick Sanchez over on X and get some of those segments and stuff like that. Karen Carpenter's in the house, Knights of the Storms, Karen Carpenter. And Karen, thank you so much. I love thinking about you out there on the West Coast. She says, links shared, great coverage. Thanks to you and the Russian team. All right. I love it. That's awesome. And by the way, that's Milford, Russia, not Milford, New Hampshire. Thank you so much, Karen. That's really, really great of you. Appreciate it. That's very kind. And great work on your part all the time. And when you're a guest here, when you're on Knights of the Storm, it's just fantastic. So that is a big deal, but I want to give you a little bit more as well, everybody, because I want to continue talking about the lies. As Scott Ritter mentioned those things, very important to get into some of those lies about the economy and also a few other things about whether Donald Trump actually heard from a number of the folks inside the so-called intel community, the IC, as to they warning him that, contrary to what Pete Hegseth said, no, you can't sustain this forever. No, you don't have unlimited arms, and they have the home court advantage, and you're probably going to lose. Well, here it is, everybody, in the news notes. And Daniel McAdams and Ron Paul did a fantastic job on this. Daniel was just like a maestro on this. It was phenomenal. I'll show you some of the information that I've been able to put together, partially from the Washington Post, partially from Zero Hedge, and a few others. But let me give you this. This comprised a pretty sizable section of the day today. But I wanted to make sure that I did a decent job for you here. And as always, otherwise, why be here? I don't want to waste your time. I want to give you something good. And I know that, not all the stories are immediately important to certain people, and for others they are. So hopefully I'm giving you good balance on these things and giving it the appropriate attention that you might think it deserves. So we've got U.S. dead, Trump's clownish appearance. Just incredible. Our friend Martin, thank you, Martin, for being so awesome. There you go, Martin, as he said, yo. And Martin, I don't know if you knew this, but I'm quoting you right here. Our friend Martin posted this about the Trump display as Donald wore a silly baseball cap to present himself and his wife, the VP and his wife, to the bodies of U.S. military aggressors killed in the U.S. attack on Iran. And he wrote, "The idiot in chief sports a baseball cap and salutes rather than placing his palm over his black heart." Nice. Nicely put, my friend. And as I said, by the way, Hegseth speaks as the part of the initial post that inspired Martin to write that. Hegseth spouting more war-minded blather about his boastful, belligerent fracas of a fascist mind. Yes, there's a lot of turmoil and tumult inside that guy's brain. But here is what we saw as Trump was there.
Sunday, President Trump and Secretary Hegseth attended the dignified transfer yesterday at Dover Air Force Base. One more service member's death was announced this afternoon.
The president's been right to say there will be casualties. Things like this don't happen without casualties. There will be more casualties. And no one especially our generation knows what it's like to see Americans come home in caskets. But that doesn't weaken us one bit. It stiffens our spine and our resolve to say this.
Okay, so is he trying to pretend that his generation is like the generation that got drafted for friggin' Vietnam? Is he trying to pretend that his generation is something like the generation that got rooked into going over to Europe and Japan in World War II? Or is he talking about the United States spreading its tentacles around the globe, as Charlie Robinson would note, the giant leviathan, the octopus of global control, spreading its tentacles through its neo-corporate fascist military internationalism to gain friends and influence people? And sorry, I don't want to refer to that book. It's actually not a bad book. To take over other countries, get their resources, and somehow that means that you're of a generation that's just, you truly have seen the hardship of war, haven't you? Occupying Afghanistan, helping them promote the poppy crop and make it the world's dominant poppy crop, contrary to the Constitution. Everything that guy just said there immediately should set off alarm bells to people to say he's a massive warmongering egotist who's disconnected from reality, particularly the reality of the U.S. Constitution, which doesn't allow for any of that stuff, especially the occupation of Afghanistan or the drug war. But just below this, we saw Martin. This is great. It says, Miriam and Benji during their vetting process. Yes, he's impatient to get off that weekend sofa. He's someone we can work with. And then at the bottom, the idiot in chief sports a baseball cap and salutes rather than placing his palm over his black heart, his chicken heart, right? Yeah. Now, I want to mention also that Trump disregarded advisors, as we mentioned. And it looks to me, and perhaps I want to check in just a second. I'm going to hop over and because I want to get some feedback from you over at Rumble as well. And feel free to post some more comments over at X. And the thumbs up and all that stuff too. But people are speculating, and I was talking with somebody down in D.C. that they do think this is the case. Daniel McAdams was speculating about this, so I brought it up and stuff. Yes, it does seem like Tulsi Gabbard is the one who got this information out to people, and that she might be getting ready to resign, which again shows the sort of mixed bag that Tulsi Gabbard has been, because she was in on that phone call when they blasted apart innocent Houthis in Yemen last year, when Hegseth did his fist pump, and Waltz was in there as well before he went over to the UN. And she was there, and she didn't resign then. And of course, as I said, I believe she's voted for every NDAA when she was in there in Congress, which said to me that she was funding unconstitutional actions for the military around the world, and she allowed herself to get deployed in similar actions. So it's a real checkerboard there, and I do mean that in an Illuminatist way. So as I mentioned here, by the way, Hegseth speaks as part of the initial post that inspired Martin. Then down below, I said the Trump disregarded advisors who said his aggression against Iran wouldn't work. Curiously, many people in D.C. suspect Tulsi Gabbard worked to get out this information to the press. She should resign from the administration. Here is some of the recent Zero Hedge reporting on it. So these are just some shots. If you want to go into my Substack, you'll see this. Here's the initial part from Tyler Durden, the team at Zero Hedge. U.S. intelligence community, IC, assessed that massive U.S. attack unlikely to oust Iranian regime. That sourced from the Washington Post, which is very closely connected to the CIA, of course. Just ask the ghost of Richard Nixon. Even a massive military assault on Iran is unlikely to topple the Islamic Republic of Iran and its state system, according to a classified assessment produced by the U.S. intelligence community shortly before the U.S. and Israel launched their current shock and awe style military campaign on Tehran. Isn't that great? And what's really great is, of course, it's really destroying the supply lines for energy and a lot of other items that go through the Persian Gulf. It's going to be awesome. Did you see the price of oil? Yeah, that's right. Started off, I think today started at $110 a barrel. Went down a little bit, but yeah, not good. The Washington Post first reported on this, perhaps based on some kind of leak or briefing by an anonymous intelligence official, and they called it. The report, compiled by the National Intelligence Council roughly a week before the so-called war, otherwise known as naked aggression by the U.S. and Israel, began, concluded that Iran's political system is structured to survive even major leadership losses, which we just saw. And I went through the way the system works right after the assassination last weekend. The Washington Post reports this. However, this should really come as no surprise to anyone awake and observant throughout the past 2+ decades of America's nation-building efforts in the Middle East, from Afghanistan to Iraq to Libya. They failed in every instance. The intelligence report also poured cold water on the idea that Iran's opposition could quickly fill any power vacuum. That would be the opposition given money, weapons, and the Starlink satellite connections that eventually got blocked by the Iranians, with help from outside, of course, from China and Russia. U.S. intelligence analysts assessed that the country's fragmented opposition movements remain too divided to seize control, which is why they're trying to get the Kurds to go down. They won't be welcome back to Turkey, that's for sure. Regardless of whether Washington pursued limited strikes against leadership targets or a broader assault on state institutions, equally unlikely, says Zero Hedge, according to the WAPO, according to current and former U.S. officials familiar with the analysis, is the prospect of a spontaneous nationwide uprising. We could speculate that this possibility may have had a chance of some degree of success within the opening 1 or 2 days of the mass U.S.-Israel bombing campaign, but it clearly didn't materialize. I disagree. I don't think it was ever a prospect at all. It's ridiculous to think that. Meanwhile, the White House has not said whether Trump was briefed on the assessment before approving the operation. So either way, it's not good. But likely such an assessment would have made it into the CIA's daily briefing for the president. Also, given reports from last week that the Pentagon also tried to inject some realism in terms of the unknowns once Tehran is attacked. So, this coming from the original WAPO article, this means the war in Iran is not going well. And the U.S. intelligence community isn't that a quaint term, is beginning the Washington game of don't blame me, I warned you not to do it. I don't know if Tulsi Gabbard authorized this leak or if it came from senior analysts from the 4 principal agencies that were involved in writing this classified report, i.e. the CIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, State Department's Bureau of Intelligence and Research, and of course the Children's Television Works. Oh, sorry. No, sorry. They're Sesame Street. I often get them confused with the seriousness of these people and killing people so well. They seem to care so much about other people's lives. And of course, the National Security Agency. It is important to understand that this report was produced by the National Intelligence Council, aka the NIC, and is under the direct control of Tulsi Gabbard. In any event, I see this as a clear signal from people involved in producing this report that they will not be the scapegoats when the Iran war turns into a debacle for Donald Trump. Well, let's not say Iran war. Let's not get off on that wrong foot. I want to head on over and say hi to people in Rumble.